Code render block. Code render block is used to define inline code or inline expressions that execute when a page is rendered. Code within a code render block is executed immediately as it is encountered, usually when the page is loaded or rendered for the first time. Code within a code declaration block is executed when it is called or triggered by the user or page interactions. There are two types of code render blocks, and they are inline code and inline expressions. Inline code render block executes one or more statements and are placed directly inside a page's HTML within the tag. Inline expression render block can be compared to response.write method in classic ASP. They are represented within the tag. These are used to display values of the variables and methods on a page. Now then, here's an example of inline expression in code render block. Here we have it in VB.NET, and we have it here in C#.NET. The first line represents an inline code render block. Here, the string wings media is assigned to the variable var1. The next line is an example of an inline expression render block used to write out the value of the var1 variable, wings media, onto the page. Namespaces. A namespace is an abstract container or environment created to hold a logical grouping of classes. It's like header files in C and C++. The .NET Framework class library is a library of classes, interfaces, and value types that are included in the Windows Software Development Kit, otherwise known as SDK. For example, if you want to perform any database transaction in your application, you have to use classes and methods which are used to perform transaction. Now, those classes and methods are grouped under a unique name. You can import that unique name in your application to invoke files within it. Now, let's talk about the basic namespaces used in ASP.NET. System. The most fundamental of all .NET Framework namespaces is System. It must be used by all applications, and it contains the classes that represent the basic data types which were presented earlier in the Common Type System section. System.code.dom. This contains classes that are used to represent a source code document. System.collections. Contains classes used to manage collections of objects. System.data. Provides support for ADO.NET and its database access classes and data types. The basic ADO.NET data management classes in the System.data namespaces are dataset and data table. These classes enable disconnected data access for Windows and web-based applications. System.drawing. Contains classes that access the system's GDI+ functions, which provide graphics support. System.io. Contains classes that enable your applications to read and write to data streams, either synchronously or asynchronously. System.reflection. Contains classes that enable the application to read the metadata of a loaded assembly. System.web. Contains a set of classes that define ASP.NET. Now, these classes essentially provide support for web browser to web server interaction. For example, the different classes contained in this namespace support web hosting, mail, security, and user interface components. System.windows.forms. This contains the classes that enable the development of Windows-based applications. And systems.xml. This contains a set of classes that enable your application to work with XML document. When you create a new web application, by default, the web form contains namespaces, and those are namely system.collections, system.data, system.drawing, system.web, system.web.ui, and system.web.ui.webcontrols. If you want to learn more about namespaces, refer to this URL. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to discuss various controls in ASP.NET. ASP.NET Page Structure. Here we're going to discuss page structure of ASP.NET. ASP.NET pages are the text files with the .aspx file name extension that can be placed on an IIS server equipped with ASP.NET. ASPX is an HTML file format used to create web pages in programming language. Here is a sample code structure for ASP.NET. It contains various elements like directives, code declaration blocks, code render blocks, ASP.NET server controls, and literal text and HTML tags. It's important to remember that ASP.NET just text file with an ASPX extensions that are processed by the runtime to create standard HTML based on their contents. Presentational elements within the page are contained within body tag, while application logic or code can be placed inside of the script tag. Now, in the upcoming lessons, we're going to discuss about these elements in greater detail. Directives and its types. The directives section is one of the most important parts of an ASP.NET page. The beginning of a directive is marked with this. A directive can appear anywhere within a page. By convention, however, a directive typically appears at the top of an ASP.NET page. There are several types of directives that you can add to an ASP.NET page. Two of the most useful types are page and import directives. Page directives. You can use a page directive to specify the default programming language for a page. Page directives can also be used to enable tracing and debugging for a page. A page directive can be represented by the tag. To change the default programming language of an ASP.NET page from Visual Basic to C#, you can use the following page directive tag. Another useful page directive is trace directive. If you enable tracing for a page, it will display additional information about the execution of the page, along with the content of the page. You can enable tracing for a page by including the following directive. Import directive. Import directive is used to import the namespaces. Now, by default, certain namespaces are automatically imported into an ASP.NET page. If you want to refer to a class that is not a member of one of the default namespaces, you must explicitly import the namespace of the class. Now, here's the syntax to import namespaces. We'll discuss other elements of ASP.NET in the next lesson.